Carroll O'Connor was the unforgettable force behind one of television's most groundbreaking series. On screen, he was a towering figure, shaping the American sitcom with his performance. But behind the curtain, beneath the accolades, there lived a resentment that time couldn't erase. This wasn't a fleeting spat or a professional disagreement. It was something deeper, something that simmered in silence for decades. Fans had no idea it was happening. O'Connor never mentioned the person publicly again, and when his story ended, the absence spoke volumes. Who was the person Carroll O'Connor couldn't bring himself to forgive? The truth will change the way you remember television history. Long before the tension, before the animosity took root, there was an undeniable spark. In the early 1970s, All in the Family exploded onto American TV, rewriting the rules of comedy and cultural commentary. At the heart of this phenomenon was Carroll O'Connor, who brought Archie Bunker to life with raw intensity and layered nuance. Archie was gruff, stubborn, and politically incorrect, yet somehow deeply relatable. Opposite him was a young actor portraying Archie's liberal son-in-law. Their scenes crackled with energy, their ideological sparring a reflection of America's own divided living rooms. The chemistry was powerful, the performances unmatched. Viewers adored watching them clash, then reluctantly connect. On the surface, they were a perfect pair. Behind the scenes, it was another story. While press interviews and public appearances showed camaraderie, crew members soon detected a subtle discomfort. Not shouting matches or showdowns, but friction. Whispers on set suggested early creative disputes, clashing approaches to character development, and diverging philosophies about the show's intent. Some say it started during rehearsals when creative decisions began rubbing both men the wrong way. Others say it was personal from the beginning. Two very different people, raised in two very different worlds, trying to work together under a national spotlight. One was a seasoned actor with classical training and decades of experience. The other, still in the early stages of his career, brought new energy to the show, along with strong opinions and a sharp tongue. As the show gained traction and became a cultural phenomenon, the differences between the two stars only grew more obvious. They had different methods, different goals, and different visions of what All in the Family should ultimately be. And while they both managed to keep things professional, for a time, that quiet tension never really went away. Carroll O'Connor, a classically trained actor with decades of experience, approached the show with meticulous care. His co-star, younger and less traditional, brought fresh energy and bold ideas. At first it worked, but as the show soared in popularity, the cracks widened. They disagreed on method, on tone, on meaning. What began as a creative difference would soon become deeply personal. From the outside, All in the Family appeared flawless. Ratings climbed, headlines praised its boldness, but the reality was far more complex. O'Connor was exacting. Every line, every beat, every gesture mattered to him. He didn't just act, he sculpted his performance. Writers admired him, but also recognized his willingness to challenge them if something didn't feel right. His co-star, in contrast, embraced spontaneity. He had opinions, lots of them, and wasn't shy about voicing them. Where Carroll aimed for character-driven arcs, his counterpart wanted to push social boundaries even further, sometimes at the cost of subtlety. Their visions, once complementary, began to diverge. One day, Carroll requested a rewrite of a scene he found too heavy-handed. His co-star refused, believing the original message was more impactful. The final edit leaned toward the younger actor's vision. Carroll didn't explode, but he noticed. That moment, small as it seemed, echoed a growing pattern. Behind closed doors, the tension escalated. Table reads became battlegrounds of tone and direction. Carroll felt his careful work was being undermined. Improvised lines by his co-star often disrupted his rhythm, upsetting the structure he had carefully crafted. Gene Stapleton and Sally Struthers often tried to mediate, but the strain lingered. Other cast members, like Gene Stapleton and Sally Struthers, were often caught in the middle, doing their best to ease the tension. But even they could not always soften the divide. Carroll had a deep emotional investment in every scene, and when his co-star played it too loose, or improvised during live tapings, it threw off his rhythm. For someone like Carroll, who built each beat with purpose, that was not just distracting, it was disruptive. And yet, neither man ever let the cracks show on camera. Their performances remained flawless, their timing sharp. Viewers would never have guessed that some scenes were filmed just moments after heated disagreements. But the tension was there, building with each passing season. Carroll grew more guarded. His co-star became more outspoken. And although they never had a full-blown falling out, at least not publicly, the relationship had clearly changed. No fights broke out, no public feuds, but the camaraderie faded. Professionalism remained, but the warmth disappeared. Over time, O'Connor grew distant. His co-star became more vocal. And though they continued delivering perfect scenes together, the relationship off-camera grew colder with each passing episode. Eventually, the quiet tension turned into something much harder to ignore. The breaking point didn't come with fireworks. It came with a single interview. O'Connor's co-star was asked about the show's legacy. At first, his answers seemed measured. Then he veered. He labeled Archie Bunker not just flawed, but dangerous, a relic of outdated toxic thinking. He made it clear he didn't want audiences to sympathize with Archie or see him as anything but a warning sign. To most, it was a critique of a character, but to Carroll, it was personal. Archie Bunker wasn't a caricature to him. He was a meticulously constructed mirror, reflecting society's contradictions and biases. Carroll never wanted Archie to be glorified, but he also never intended him to be demonized. Hearing his co-star describe Archie in such harsh terms felt like a betrayal. After all, they'd built that world together. His co-star had thrived off the energy between their characters, and now in Carroll's eyes, he was turning on it, and on him. The press picked up on the interview. Headlines suggested a rift. Carroll never responded publicly, but those close to him said he was furious. It wasn't just about the words, it was about loyalty, about respect for the craft and the message they had shaped together. In private conversations with trusted friends, Carroll reportedly said, "He knew what Archie was about. He helped shape him, and now he acts like it was poison." That sense of betrayal, of being left to defend the character alone, stayed with him for years. Even when asked about it later, Carroll never brought up the incident directly, but his tone shifted whenever the topic came close. Friends noticed the change. Carroll stopped mentioning his co-star in interviews. During reunions and retrospectives, he became noticeably tight-lipped. He would praise others, writers, producers, even guest actors, but not him, not anymore. The show had made them both famous, but in Carroll's eyes, the price was a fractured relationship that would never fully heal. From that point on, Carroll stopped mentioning his co-star entirely. During cast interviews, retrospectives, and tributes, he praised everyone but him. The silence wasn't petty, it was deliberate. Something had broken, and it would never be repaired. When All in the Family ended, it was the close of a cultural chapter. Carroll continued as Archie in Archie Bunker's place, still driven by a belief in meaningful storytelling. He took other roles later, most notably on In the Heat of the Night. But Archie's shadow always followed him. His former co-star took a different path. He left acting and became a director, one of the most celebrated of his generation. He earned accolades, critical acclaim, and influence in Hollywood. But in all his interviews, all his victories, Carroll's name was noticeably absent. Carroll noticed, and it hurt. When the show was honored at award shows or in media retrospectives, Carroll never missed an opportunity to praise Norman Lear, Gene Stapleton, and other contributors, but he never named his co-star. If asked, he deflected. If pressed, he went silent. Insiders speculated about the cause. Some chalked it up to artistic pride. Others believed it was about values, how each man saw the world. But those closest to Carroll believed it was about being discarded. He'd shared the stage, mentored, and helped launch a career. And when that career soared, Carroll was left behind. And as the years passed, the silence became the story. Two men who had shared the spotlight, who helped create one of the most impactful shows in television history, now lived like strangers. But Carroll would not stay silent forever. Eventually, when the right moment came, he spoke his truth, and what he said left fans stunned. As time went on, the silence became the story. The relationship wasn't mended. It wasn't even acknowledged. Until one moment, Carroll finally broke that silence. Just a little. In a rare televised interview during the 1990s, Carroll was asked if he missed working with the All in the Family cast. He smiled and said, "Some of them, yes." When asked specifically about his on-screen son-in-law, he replied, "The boy did a good job. That was all. No name, no sentiment, just a clipped acknowledgement." To casual viewers, it seemed polite, but to those who knew Carroll, it was piercing. He wasn't forgetful, he was intentional. His refusal to speak the name wasn't an oversight, it was a verdict. Privately, Carroll's friends confirmed that he still carried the wound. He felt his co-star had disrespected the legacy they built, turned on the very show that elevated him. Carroll wasn't upset about being overshadowed, he was upset about being erased. Several of his colleagues later confirmed what many suspected. Carroll never truly forgave what he saw as a rewriting of their shared history. Not only had the respect vanished, but so had the acknowledgement. It was not about ego, it was about legacy. Carroll had poured his soul into the show, into the character, into the message. And watching someone walk away from that, while downplaying the role he played, cut deeper than most fans realized. To Carroll, it was not just about professional differences or creative disputes. It was about loyalty, gratitude, and the sense that when everything was said and done, he had been left behind. In industry circles, this silence became a defining feature of their relationship. Carroll never lashed out, never went public with accusations, but he made sure his silence was loud. He chose dignity over drama, distance over bitterness. And even in his last years when prompted, he never changed course. Carroll O'Connor's final years were marked by profound loss and quiet reflection. After losing his son and battling illness, he gradually stepped away from public life. Yet he remained a respected figure, cherished for his artistry and candor. When he passed away in 2001, the industry mourned deeply. Tributes poured in from cast members, producers, and lifelong admirers. Norman Lear praised him. Gene Stapleton shared heartfelt memories. But one voice was silent, his former co-star. No statement, no funeral appearance, no eulogy. Fans were stunned. Many hoped for a final gesture, a letter, a speech, a quote. Nothing came. Some suggested private grief. Others saw it as confirmation that the rift had never healed. The funeral was modest, filled with warmth and admiration. Friends and co-stars shared stories, but one absence loomed. The man who had shared so many scenes with Carroll did not appear. The estrangement, long hidden from public view, was now undeniable. When asked in later interviews about All in the Family, Carroll's former co-star spoke in broad terms, never mentioning Carroll by name, never offering the kind of tribute fans had hoped for. It was not angry. It was not bitter. It was just empty. That emotional distance left a lasting impression. It was as if those shared years had been quietly boxed away, no longer part of the narrative he wanted to carry. Fans noticed. Comment sections filled with questions. Why the silence? Why the coldness? And though no direct answer was ever given, many believed the truth was simple. Whatever happened between Carroll O'Connor and his co-star had never been resolved. It was not a tabloid feud or a dramatic outburst. It was something deeper, a fundamental break that neither man could bring himself to fix. Some say Carroll waited for an apology that never came. Others believe he made peace with the silence. But one thing is certain, when it came time to say goodbye, there was no reunion, no heartfelt message, just the quiet echo of a friendship that had long since faded. Later retrospectives celebrated Carroll's brilliance. His name appeared in documentaries, his work studied in acting classes. Yet again, his co-star remained distant, physically and emotionally. Even in interviews when asked about All in the Family, his answers remained vague. The connection had been severed and he never reached back. Carroll O'Connor gave the world more than a character. He gave it a mirror. Archie Bunker was complex, provocative, and unforgettable. And behind that role was an actor who poured everything he had into his craft. But Carroll was more than Archie. He was principled, deliberate, and deeply loyal. That's why the fracture with his co-star hurt so deeply, because what they had on screen was real chemistry, the spark that lit up television, and then it was gone. There was no final interview, no reconciliation, no Hollywood ending. Just two artists who went their separate ways and never looked back. In a show about bridging divides, their own divide never closed. Carroll never said his name again, not out of hatred, but out of resolve. He let the silence speak, and in doing so, preserved his side of the story. One of pride, of pain, of principle. The man Carroll O'Connor never forgave was once his greatest scene partner. But when the curtain fell, their bond had vanished. And in its place was the most telling absence of all. Because sometimes the loudest statements are the ones never spoken.